They say life changes in a heartbeat, but what happened to Mark that morning would shatter everything he thought he knew about luck, love, and betrayal. Mark Thompson, 42, sat on the tattered couch of his tiny apartment in Detroit, Michigan, staring blankly at the empty coffee mug in his hand. He had just watched his wife, Lisa, walk out the door, suitcase in hand, eyes filled with resentment. The walls of the apartment felt smaller than ever, suffocating him in the silence that followed her footsteps. All he could think was I ever enough? Mark had always been the steady one, the one who worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on while Lisa chased her dreams. But the sacrifices had gone unnoticed, and now, as he listened to the echo of the front door slam, he felt a mix of anger and disbelief. He wasn't just alone, he was invisible. With nothing left but his pride, Mark stumbled into the kitchen and grabbed the lottery ticket he had bought on a whim. It was a habit, a tiny escape from the crushing weight of reality. He didn't think much of it, just scratched the silver coating absent-mindedly, when his eyes went wide. Numbers matched. All of them. $1 million. He screamed. The sound tore through the apartment like a release of decades of stress and heartbreak. Mark jumped around the room, laughing and crying all at once, as if his mind couldn't decide which emotion deserved first claim. For the first time, he felt untouchable, free, alive. But as the excitement faded, a wave of fear hit him. Money could solve problems, yes, but could it fix a broken life? Could it bring back the wife who had left, or the dignity he'd lost? Mark realized this $1 million wasn't just a gift. It was a test. A question from fate asking, "What will you do now?" The neighbors had always looked at Mark as the poor guy, the man who never got ahead. Now no one could ignore him. But he didn't want to flaunt it. He wanted something deeper, something meaningful. And deep down, he knew this sudden windfall could either destroy him or give him the life he had always dreamed of, if only he had the courage to seize it. And just as he sat there, plotting his next move, his phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. "I hope you're happy now." Mark stared at the screen, heart pounding. He realized then that this wasn't just about money. It was about power, pride, and rewriting the rules of his own story. Mark smiled, a slow, dangerous smile that hinted at things no one expected. He wasn't going to just spend the money. He was going to turn his life upside down and maybe, just maybe, make Lisa regret every choice she'd made. The morning after his $1 million win, Mark woke up before sunrise, restless. He had barely slept, his mind racing with possibilities. Should he pay off debts? Quit his job? Travel the world? Or should he start by making Lisa see what she had walked away from? He poured himself a coffee, the bitter taste grounding him as a plan began to take shape. He first went to the small diner where he had worked for the last 10 years. His old co-workers stared in disbelief as he walked through the door. Gone was the tired, overworked man they knew, replaced by someone sharper, brighter, radiating a new energy. Some whispered. Some stared. Some envied. Mark didn't care. He had bigger things to plan. Mark picked up the phone and called a local lawyer he had met once years ago about a small will issue. The voice on the other end barely recognized him as he asked for advice on forming a trust and protecting his newfound fortune. "It's about making sure I don't make the same mistakes twice," he said, voice steady. By noon, Mark was sitting across a sleek, black SUV in a dealership he could never have dreamed of entering before. Cars that gleamed like jewelry surrounded him, and the salesman's eyes widened. "Looking for something special?" he asked. Mark smiled slightly, not yet ready to indulge, but he knew this was the first of many small statements he would make. But Mark's first move wasn't about luxury, it was about respect. He went to the local community center, paid off overdue rent for families struggling in his old neighborhood, and donated to a small daycare he used to volunteer at. Cameras weren't there, but whispers spread. People started noticing a different Mark, one with money, yes, but also vision. Word got to Lisa faster than he expected. A friend of hers texted, "Mark's making moves. People are talking." Her words cut deeper than he imagined, not jealousy but curiosity. He realized his fortune wasn't just a personal victory. It was a lever to rewrite the narrative of his life. By evening, he rented a modest office space downtown, a place to plan investments and start a small business. Nothing flashy yet, but it was a sign that Mark wasn't just lucky. He was building a future. The man who had been invisible to everyone was now someone people would have to notice. And late that night, sitting back in his apartment, Mark realized something. Money alone didn't heal heartbreak, but it gave him options. Choices. Power. He whispered to himself. I'm not the same man who got left behind. And soon, she'll see what she lost. Just when Mark thought he was on his own, fate stepped in. And it wasn't at all who he expected. The next morning, Mark walked through the streets of Detroit with a quiet confidence. The city felt different somehow, as if the buildings and the people sensed his change. He was no longer the man who paid bills in cash while hoping for scraps. He was someone who could rewrite the rules. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that money alone wasn't enough. He needed insight, guidance, someone who knew how to navigate this new world. That someone arrived in the form of an old friend. Jenna Marshall, 39, once a high-powered financial analyst who had left the corporate grind to help struggling entrepreneurs. She spotted Mark outside a cafe, her sharp eyes noticing his sudden glow. "Mark Thompson?" she asked, disbelief and curiosity mixing in her tone. He nodded and she smiled. "Looks like life just handed you a second chance." Over a table littered with coffee cups, Mark explained everything. The lottery win, Lisa leaving, the weight of a lifetime of struggle. Jenna listened carefully, nodding, her mind racing with ideas. "You don't just need money," she said. "You need strategy. You need to invest in yourself, and in things that can actually multiply your power." Jenna offered him a plan. Think small businesses first. Build a local empire. Control your story before anyone else does. You have the money, but you need influence. That's what people respect. Mark listened, intrigued. He realized he had been approaching this like a man who won a lottery, excited but naive. Jenna was the first person who treated him like a king in waiting, not just a lucky man. By afternoon, Mark was visiting his first potential investment, a small printing shop struggling to stay afloat. The owner, Mr. Harper, 62, looked skeptical at first. "Why would a lottery winner care about my shop?" he asked. Mark simply smiled. "Because sometimes it's the little things that make the biggest difference." Mark didn't just buy the business, he learned it. He worked alongside the employees, understanding the process, respecting their experience. This wasn't about money, it was about credibility, and every handshake, every nod of respect, was another brick in the foundation of his future. Word of Mark's involvement traveled fast. People began whispering, "The poor guy is back, but different." By evening, Jenna and Mark reviewed their next moves. Multiple small businesses, local investments, and plans to turn Detroit into the stage for his transformation. Mark realized for the first time that fortune without vision could easily fade. But with the right allies, it could be unstoppable. That night, Mark received another message from Lisa. "I heard what you're doing, impressive. Don't get too full of yourself." He laughed softly. He wasn't doing this for her. He was doing it for himself, and for the life he always deserved. Jenna's voice came through the phone, playful but firm. "Get ready. Tomorrow, things get interesting. When you think fortune only brings luck, you're only scratching the surface. Sometimes the right ally arrives at the right moment and changes the game entirely." Mark's story is no longer just about money. It's about strategy, revenge, and rewriting destiny. Mark had learned the rules. Money alone didn't command respect, but influence did. And today, he was about to make his first bold statement. By mid-morning, Mark was driving through downtown Detroit in his sleek, black SUV, Jenna beside him, a small notebook of strategies in hand. The city pulsed with life, unaware that one of its forgotten sons was about to change its streets, and its gossip forever. Mark's plan was simple yet audacious. He would host a public charity event, one that combined generosity with spectacle. The venue was a small abandoned warehouse, cleared and transformed with lights, banners, and tables overflowing with donations for local families. News of the event had spread quietly. People came curious, unaware that the man behind it was the very neighbor they had ignored or pitted for years. Mark stood at the entrance, greeting everyone personally, shaking hands, remembering names, listening to stories. Every smile, every handshake was a subtle assertion. Mark Thompson was no longer invisible. He was the man with the money, the power, and the heart. By mid-afternoon, reporters had started showing up, drawn by whispers of a mysterious lottery winner turned philanthropist. Mark, poised and charismatic, spoke with confidence. "I won a lottery, yes. But this city, these people, gave me something no money could ever buy: hope. Today, I want to give a little back." Lisa's name surfaced almost immediately. One reporter asked, "Any family involved?" Mark smiled faintly. "I don't define success by who's by your side. It's what you do when you're left to stand alone." His words, layered with subtle defiance, hinted at a story only he and Lisa knew. As donations poured in, Mark noticed a familiar face near the back, Lisa. She had heard about the event and decided to see for herself. Her expression was a mix of shock, jealousy, and a grudging admiration. Mark caught her glance, raised his hand politely, and turned back to the crowd. It was a silent message. He was rising without her, and she had no control over it. Jenna whispered, "She's here." Mark nodded, a calm, dangerous glint in his eyes. Good. Let her see the man she left behind. For the first time, he felt not only empowered by money, but by the knowledge that he could command attention, respect, and even envy, without ever needing her validation. By sunset, the event was a roaring success. People lined up, media coverage was underway, and Mark had made a subtle, undeniable statement to the city. He was no longer just the poor guy. He was a force to be reckoned with, a man who had taken tragedy and turned it into spectacle. Just when Mark thought he had control, reality reminded him that power always attracts attention, and not all of it is friendly. The morning after the charity event, Mark woke to a flurry of messages, emails, and missed calls. Not all were congratulations. Some were warnings, skeptical notes, and veiled threats. "Who does this guy think he is?" one read. Mark smiled. This was the first test. He wasn't afraid. He thrived on challenges. By noon, a local business rival, Victor Kane, 47, arrived at his office. Victor, wealthy, arrogant, and used to controlling the Detroit business scene, leaned against Mark's desk with a smirk. "So, the lottery winner thinks he can play with the big boys," Victor sneered. Mark stood calmly, eyes locked on Victor. "I'm not here to play. I'm here to change the game." Victor wasn't impressed by charity or goodwill. He only saw competition, and he planned to undermine Mark before he could get too comfortable. Contracts were delayed, small businesses whispered rumors, and social media quietly mocked him. For the first time since the lottery win, Mark felt pressure, but not fear. Jenna sat across from him, analyzing the situation. "He's trying to intimidate you," she said. "But intimidation only works if you let it. You're bigger than his noise. You need strategy, not reaction." Mark nodded, the fire in his eyes igniting. This wasn't just a test of wealth, it was a test of character. Mark decided to respond quietly, but powerfully. He invested in another struggling business. This time a tech startup run by a young, passionate woman named Tasha. At first, the team was skeptical, unsure if Mark was another rich outsider trying to control their vision. But he proved himself by staying involved, offering guidance, and respecting their ideas. Meanwhile, Lisa had started appearing more frequently around Detroit, curious and frustrated. She watched as Mark navigated his growing empire with skill and respect, realizing that the man she left behind had transformed into someone she could barely recognize. The envy and longing in her eyes were undeniable, but so was her hesitation. That evening, Mark hosted a private dinner with Jenna, Tasha, and a few loyal employees to celebrate small victories. They laughed, strategized, and envisioned the future. But Mark couldn't shake the thought. Every step he took now was being watched, by rivals, by onlookers, and by the woman who once dismissed him. As the night ended, Mark stepped onto the balcony overlooking Detroit. The city lights twinkled like stars, each one a reminder of the life he had fought for and the empire he was building. He whispered to himself, "Let them watch. Let them doubt. Soon, everyone will see who I really am." Power isn't just about wealth. It's about resilience, vision, and the ability to thrive under pressure. Mark's journey is just beginning, and every challenge only sharpens him for the moment when the world will finally take notice. Mark had played carefully, but now it was time to take a leap, one that would either cement his power or expose him to everything he feared. Mark woke before dawn, the city still cloaked in shadows. Jenna was already waiting at his apartment with a fresh coffee and a determined look. "Today," she said, "we stop reacting. We make them react to us." Mark nodded, heart racing. For the first time, he felt like the architect of his destiny, not a passenger. By mid-morning, Mark had rented a billboard in downtown Detroit, the largest in the city, featuring the tagline, "Success isn't given. It's earned." Below the line, photos of the businesses he had saved, the families he had helped, and his modest photo smiling confidently at the camera. The message was clear. Mark Thompson was no longer invisible. Victor Kane saw the billboard almost immediately. He stormed into a nearby cafe where his assistants waited, his face red with fury. He thinks he can show off like this? We'll see about that, Victor growled. His pride had been wounded, and now he was preparing a counterattack. Meanwhile, Lisa was once again observing from afar, phone in hand, capturing the billboard photo. Her emotions were a tangled mix of admiration, shock, and a grudging realization that the man she left behind had transformed into someone extraordinary. For the first time, she wondered, had she made a mistake? Mark didn't stop there. He arranged a public event at a luxury hotel downtown, inviting media, influencers, and the community. The event showcased his investments, his charitable initiatives, and his vision for revitalizing Detroit's local economy. Every speech, every handshake, and every photograph was carefully orchestrated, but it all felt effortless. During the event, Jenna whispered, "Watch Lisa. She's here." Mark's eyes scanned the crowd, and there she was, elegant but hesitant, clearly torn between resentment and intrigue. This time, he didn't approach her. He let the crowd, the media, and the city see the man he had become. Victor tried to undermine the event, sending negative social media posts and arranging last-minute rumors. But the public was captivated by Mark's authenticity. People were drawn to a story of redemption, resilience, and quiet power rising from adversity. Victor realized that this wasn't just a lottery win. It was a transformation that could not be stopped by envy or malice. As the night ended, Mark stood on the hotel balcony overlooking the city, Jenna at his side. Lights twinkled below like stars, each one a testament to his journey. He whispered, "This is only the beginning. Let them all watch. Let them all wonder." And for the first time, he felt fully untouchable, not because of money, but because of the man he had become. Fortune can give you opportunities, but courage and strategy turn them into legends. Mark had taken his first bold leap, and everyone who doubted him, from rivals to the woman who left, would now be forced to watch as he rewrote his story. Sometimes the bigger you rise, the harder the fall seems to approach. But Mark was about to show that true power isn't just wealth, it's foresight. The morning after his grand event, Mark woke to an unexpected headline. Detroit's lottery winner stuns city. Who is Mark Thompson? The article praised his charity, his investments, and his bold public presence. But nestled at the bottom, a line about Victor Kane's planned counterattack caught Mark's eye. Victor was moving quickly, maybe too quickly. Jenna arrived within minutes, laptop in hand. Victor's not just upset, he's desperate. He's using the media, social influence, and any connection he has to try to discredit you. But there's a pattern, he's predictable. Mark leaned back, a faint smirk forming. Predictable means beatable, he said. Meanwhile, Lisa had grown bold. She approached a mutual friend of theirs, subtly asking about Mark's activities. Curiosity, envy, and lingering affection were tangled in her mind. She still couldn't understand how the man she once dismissed could dominate attention, respect, and admiration so effortlessly. Mark decided to strike first, not with money, but with narrative. He held a public press conference at Detroit's historic waterfront. Cameras flashed as he walked up to the podium, calm, confident, and commanding. "I am Mark Thompson," he began, voice steady, "and I didn't get here by chance. I got here by learning, by resilience, and by never underestimating anyone, including myself." Victor, watching from afar, scowled as Mark's words resonated with the crowd. Every reporter's lens captured Mark's composure, charisma, and subtle defiance. Victor realized that attacking Mark now would only amplify his story. He was losing the narrative, and he hated it. The twist came mid-conference. Lisa appeared at the edge of the crowd, unable to resist seeing him firsthand. Their eyes met, hers wide, conflicted, a faint tremor of recognition in her expression. Mark didn't falter. He didn't approach her. He let the moment speak for itself. He was no longer the man she abandoned. After the press conference, Mark met privately with Tasha and Jenna. "Victor will escalate," Jenna warned. "Expect sabotage, rumors, maybe even legal threats. You need to be ready." Mark nodded. "Good. Let him try. Every move he makes just shows how afraid he is, and how right I am to do this my way." That night, Mark returned to his apartment, overlooking Detroit's glittering lights. He finally allowed himself a quiet smile. The city, the media, and even Lisa were watching, and for the first time, Mark felt the thrill of true power. Not the thrill of money, but the thrill of being in control of his own story. Power isn't given, attention isn't earned overnight, and respect isn't bought. It's created in moments of courage, strategy, and resilience. Mark had reached his turning point, and no one, not even the woman who left him, could ignore it. They say karma has a way of catching up, but Mark was about to accelerate it, and nobody saw it coming. The morning after the press conference, Mark woke up with a plan that would shock everyone. Victor Kane thought he controlled the game, but Mark had learned that true power was invisible until it hit. He called Jenna and Tasha into his downtown office, laying out his boldest move yet. A public unveiling of his investments that would make Victor look reckless and greedy. By noon, Detroit's business district was buzzing. Mark's team had leaked hints of a new venture that combined local businesses, tech startups, and community projects, all tied together in a way that promised both profit and social impact. Victor, as expected, tried to sabotage by spreading rumors, but this time Mark was ready. Every question, every rumor had been anticipated. Lisa appeared again, this time closer to the action. She watched as Mark confidently unveiled the details of his new ventures on a large outdoor screen, explaining how each investment would benefit the community while building an unstoppable network of influence. She couldn't look away. Every word, every smile, every calculated move of his made her pulse quicken. Victor, furious, tried a direct confrontation, stepping into the public square and shouting accusations. But Mark didn't flinch. Calm, composed, he responded with facts, numbers, and undeniable proof that his strategy was sound, his vision clear, and his power growing exponentially. Victor's credibility crumbled in real time. Mark had orchestrated one final twist. He secretly acquired a significant stake in Victor's own failing venture, leveraging his insider knowledge and connections. When the announcement went live, Victor realized the man he tried to intimidate now controlled his future. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Lisa's jaw dropped. That evening, Mark stood on a rooftop overlooking Detroit, Jenna and Tasha beside him. "It's done," Jenna said softly. Mark exhaled, feeling a rare mix of triumph and satisfaction. He hadn't just won money. He had rewritten the rules, turned the tables, and proven that resilience and intelligence outweighed brute arrogance. Lisa finally approached him, hesitant and conflicted. "I didn't expect this," she admitted quietly. Mark smiled faintly, a hint of mystery in his eyes. "I never expected anyone to believe in me, except myself. And now, the world has no choice but to notice." She realized the man she left was no longer the one she knew. Life doesn't reward those who wait. It rewards those who act with courage, vision, and a strategy. Mark had transformed his heartbreak into power, his lottery into legend, and his rivals into witnesses. And for the first time, he wasn't just lucky. He was unstoppable. Every action has a consequence, and Mark was about to witness the fallout of his boldest moves, watching rivals crumble and the woman who left him face the truth. The morning after the public unveiling, Detroit's news outlets exploded. Headlines read, "From lottery winner to power broker, Mark Thompson rewrites Detroit and Victor Kane outmaneuvered. The fall of a local titan." Victor's arrogance and scheming were laid bare, and his credibility evaporated in hours. People who had once followed him now whispered about Mark with awe. Victor tried to respond, calling press conferences, making statements, and scrambling to regain footing, but every move backfired. Investors pulled out, partners reconsidered alliances, and the public had already made up their minds. Mark's careful planning and unwavering composure had left Victor exposed, humiliated, and powerless. Lisa, too, faced the truth she had been avoiding. Seeing Mark succeed publicly and strategically left her conflicted. She couldn't deny his brilliance, his resilience, or the transformation from the man she had left behind. For the first time, she realized her own misjudgment and felt a mix of regret and fascination. Mark, meanwhile, stayed above the fray. He didn't gloat, he didn't taunt. Instead, he focused on his vision, investing further in businesses, supporting local entrepreneurs, and building a reputation as a man who combined wealth with wisdom. Every decision he made reinforced the message. Mark Thompson had arrived, and he was here to stay. Victor's attempts to publicly challenge him only amplified Mark's influence. Social media erupted with support for Mark, praising his intelligence, humility, and decisive action. The man who was once pitted for a lottery win had now become a symbol of cunning, resilience, and empowerment. Lisa finally approached Mark privately. I underestimated you," she admitted, voice low, eyes sincere. Mark listened, calm, composed. "You don't get a trophy for leaving," he said softly. "I did this for me, for my life, not for anyone else." The subtle lesson was clear. Mark had risen, not for revenge, but for self-respect, power, and independence. By nightfall, Mark stood once more on a rooftop overlooking the sparkling city. The streets below hummed with life, the lights twinkling like stars. He thought of every choice, every risk, and every strategy. He had turned heartbreak into opportunity, ridicule into respect, and a lottery win into a lasting legacy. Some people get lucky. Some people rise through skill. Mark had done both, but it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about control, respect, and showing the world that even the humblest beginnings can lead to extraordinary endings. Every journey has an ending, but some endings rewrite everything you thought you knew. Mark's story was about to shock everyone, including the woman who left him. The morning was crisp and quiet in Detroit. Mark stepped onto the balcony of his high-rise apartment, overlooking the city he had transformed. The skyline glittered like jewels, a reflection of every risk, every strategy, every moment of resilience he had invested. Today, he would finalize the ultimate move, not just for wealth or revenge, but to cement his place as someone unstoppable. Mark called Jenna and Tasha into his office. "Today, we finished the game," he said, with a quiet confidence in his tone. They unveiled a plan to consolidate his investments, secure control over struggling businesses, and publicly expose Victor's last desperate schemes. Every move was precise, every step deliberate. By noon, Victor Kane received a notice. Mark now held controlling stakes in nearly every venture Victor had tried to dominate. The news went public immediately, and Victor's empire crumbled in hours. His arrogance and attempts to manipulate the city had backfired spectacularly, leaving him humiliated and powerless. Lisa appeared at the heart of the city, finally confronting the man she once left behind. She stood a few feet away as Mark addressed a crowd of reporters and local business leaders. His tone was calm, confident, yet full of subtle authority. "I didn't do this to show off. I did this to prove that resilience, strategy, and courage can transform a life. Every person has a chance to rewrite their story. Mine just happens to be more visible." For the first time, Lisa's admiration and regret were undeniable. She approached him quietly after the crowd dispersed. "Mark, I didn't realize," she began. Mark cut her off gently. "I did this for me, not for anyone who left me behind." His voice held both power and calm finality. She realized the man she had abandoned had grown beyond her influence. Mark didn't stop there. In a final twist, he revealed that a portion of his lottery winnings had been quietly invested in a charitable foundation in Lisa's mother's name, showing generosity without ego. The gesture stunned everyone, including Lisa. It was a reminder that true power was not just about wealth or revenge. It was about strategy, vision, and emotional intelligence. That night, Mark stood on his rooftop one last time, looking over the city. Jenna and Tasha joined him, smiling. They had witnessed the rise of a man who turned heartbreak into strategy, poverty into power, and a lottery win into a lasting legacy. Mark whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning. Everyone who doubted me, everyone who left me behind, now knows the truth. Some people get lucky. Some people rise through skill." Mark had done both, and now he had rewritten the rules of power, respect, and legacy. Detroit would never forget the man who turned a $1 million lottery into a story that changed everything. If you suddenly had a chance to rewrite your life like Mark, what bold move would you make first? Comment below. Let's see who's ready to take control of their destiny.